Hey, Algebra 2 students, how's it going? I hope you did well on your solve by factoring, excuse me. Today we're going to look at something called complete the square. Today we're going to spend a little time with the method of complete the square and the technique of complete the square, and then tomorrow we'll use it to actually solve the equations. So let's go here. I think this is the one I want. Right. This says, how can you use pieces like these to form a square with side length x plus 3 and no overlapping pieces? Show a sketch of your solution. How many of each piece do you need? Okay, so let's hit this play. If a square has side length of x plus 3, I don't know if any of you used algebra tiles in your Algebra 1 class, but the square one, let me show you. This one is x squared, and this is an x, and this is just a number. Okay, so if we were going to make a square with a side length of x plus 3, we could use these tiles to fill in and find the area. Okay, so here's a drawing of x plus 3 times x plus 3. We know to find the area, we multiply length times width. I wish these were clickable and draggable, but they're not. But if you multiply x plus 3 times x plus 3, you get x squared plus 6x plus 9. So you would need one of these, because that's your x squared, 6 of these, and 9 of these, because that is your x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay, this is called a perfect square trinomial because 9 is a perfect square. What's the square root of 9? 3. And then 3 times 2 is 6. When you have a perfect square trinomial, let's look at some of those. Okay, so we said x squared plus 6x plus 9 because the square root of 9 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6, which is your middle term. X squared plus 4x plus 16 is a perfect square trinomial because the square root of 16 is 4, and 4 times 2 is, oh, I messed that one up. That should be an 8 because this is 2 times the square root of this one. Oh, what if I had x squared plus 14x plus 49? Square root of 49 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. And that's called a perfect square trinomial. You can also have the square root of 4 is 2. 2 squared is, or 2 times 2 can be negative 4. If you do, you can also have perfect square this. So this would be x minus 2 squared. This one would be x plus 7 squared. This one would be x plus 4 squared. Okay, those are perfect square trinomials, and that's kind of where complete the square comes from. Okay. All right, let's see. Let's go back here. And this example is solving by finding square roots. And it says, what is the solution of the equation? If I'm going to solve this one, I'm going to change off that funny color. Okay, so I have 4x squared plus 10 equals 46. There's no just x term in there. It's only an x squared. So I can do this by subtracting the 10. What would I do next to get the x by itself? Divide by 4. Then you have x squared equals 9 because these cancel out. And then we would solve that by taking the square root of both sides. So x could be plus or minus 3 because 3 squared is 9 and negative 3 squared is also 9. That's why we have the plus or minus. Okay, we could do that with that one. We could just move around, isolate the x because there's an x squared term, but there's no x term. Okay. Next, 3x squared minus 5 equals 25. We can do this one the same way. We can just find the square root because there's no x term, so we don't have to worry about solving a quadratic because there's no x. Okay, add 5 to both sides. 25 plus 5 is 30. Working to get the x by itself, divide by 3, divide by 3. Uh-oh, doesn't work out nice and even, but what would we do next to get the x squared by itself? Next thing you would do is square root and square root. So you'd have x equals plus or minus the square root of 10. We can't simplify the square root of 10. There are no perfect squares that divide into it, so we're done. I promise we're getting to this complete the square thing in a minute. Hold on. All right, next. Uh-oh, that didn't work. What is the solution of the equation 7x squared minus 10 equals 25? Add the 10. (25 plus 10 is 35. Divide by 7. Is 5 a perfect square? No. How do I get the x by itself? Square root of x equals plus or minus square root of 5. Okay, that's solving by finding the square root, and you'll see that, a little bit of that in your assignment today. Okay. Let's go back. And let's look at this. Solving a perfect square trinomial. We talked a little bit while ago about what perfect square trinomial was. It says, what is the solution of this? If you know that this is a perfect square trinomial, we can factor this part. What do we have? Let's rewrite it. This factors as what multiplies to 4 and adds to 4? It'll be plus 2 and plus 2, right? So this is x plus 2 squared equals 25. What did we do? We factored. Now we're going to solve. We can still take the square root right here and get x plus 2 equals plus or minus, what's the square root of 25? 5. Now, when we get this by itself, we have x plus 2 equals 5, and x plus 2 equals negative 5. Why did I have to split that up? Because 5 squared is 25, and negative 5 squared is 25. Now, solve this side by subtracting 2. Solve this side by subtracting 2. And there are your two solutions. Both 3 and negative 7 are values for x that would make that equation true. Here's another one like that. It says, what is the solution of x squared minus 14x plus 49 equals 25? If that left side of the equal sign is a perfect square trinomial, that's Pumpkin growling. He thinks he wants outside, but it's really cold. Okay. What numbers multiply to 49 and add to 14? 7. And because we want a negative 14, that's going to be a minus 7, which is x minus 7 squared. So now we take the square root. And we get x minus 7 equals plus or minus 5. Split it up. Add the 7. Add the 7. 2 solutions. Not too bad, huh? Okay. Now, that was if you had a perfect square trinomial. It's pretty easy if you have a perfect square trinomial. Now, we can use complete the square to create a perfect square trinomial so that we can solve it. Okay, so here we go. This has x squared minus 10x. There was another one I wanted to show you. Hang on just a second. It's this one. This kind of takes us through the steps of that. It says you can form a perfect square trinomial from x squared plus bx by adding b over 2 squared. B over 2 just means half the middle number and then square it. So if you have x squared plus bx, a perfect square trinomial is going to have some other number over here, right? To find, you remember we said that we took the square root of this number and we multiplied it by 2 to get this number? So the opposite of that is if we have that one, then we're going to divide by 2 and then square it. So we take this b and divide it by 2 and then square it to get that last number. Remember we had like x squared plus 6x plus 9. And I told you that the square root of 9 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, so we took the square root and then we multiplied it times 2. The opposite of square root is squared. The opposite of times 2 is divide by 2. So if we had this and we were asked to complete the square, we would take this number. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. Let's try another one. What if we have x squared plus 10x? Half of 10 is 5. 5 squared is 25. That would make a perfect square trinomial. The reason for creating a perfect square trinomial is to make it easier to factor so that you can solve it, which is our goal. All right, I think that's the only slide there. Now let's go back to this one that said completing the square. No, that's not what I wanted. Go back. Do you talk to your computer? I talk to mine a lot. Okay, now we have this one. X squared minus 10x. Complete the square. We want to what would the number be if we were going to make that a perfect square trinomial? We're going to do this because it's going to make some quadratic equations easy to solve. X squared minus 10x. We need some number right here that's going to make it a perfect square. To get that number there, we're going to take this 10 and divide it by 2 and then square it. What's negative 10 divided by 2? 5. 5 squared is, or negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25. Okay, we had another one that we did a while ago was x squared plus 8x. I need to know what number completes that square, makes it a perfect square trinomial. So I would take this one and divide it by 2 and square it. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. Okay, that's complete the square. The key step to completing the square is half the middle term and square it. What about this one? X squared plus 6x. If I wanted to make that a perfect square so that I could factor it, or we're also going to use complete the square for something else too. I'm going to take that 6 divided by 2 to your middle term divided by 2 and square it. Okay. That's the method of complete the square, is to take the middle term, half it, and square it. Okay, now, does this have an example for, yeah. One thing we're going to do with complete the square is to write it in vertex form. And I'm going to stop this and make a separate video.